It requires an immense amount of stamina simply to maintain a great power. A voice, laced with weariness, declared, "This is my final offer. Do you truly intend to remain apart from me?" A new voice, firm and resolute, cut through the silence. "I have no intention of joining forces with a monster." The speaker's tone was unwavering, even in the face of such an overwhelming presence. "How foolish," the first voice replied, a hint of exasperation creeping into its tone. The scene shifted, revealing a battlefield where the conflict was intensifying. The monarch of transfiguration and the army of destruction are dismantling everything you hold dear, a voice declared, a cold, calculated tone filling the air. "Eventually, you will fail to protect. Even at this moment, while we engage, despite you being the king of the departed, you must feel trepidation." The speaker continued, "Do you wish for the flames that consume even non-existence itself to reduce you to ashes?" A pause followed, and then, "Everything you are desperately trying to preserve will fade away, an illusion. Surely, you must feel it, since you have awakened the powers of Ashbourne. The countless cries of anguish within this land and world. This is what a war truly is," the voice announced, a note of dark satisfaction coloring its tone. "This is the sound of the army of destruction, laying waste to humanity. Listen closely to their desperate cries. Let the despair spread like a plague and silence all hope," the speaker added, a sinister laugh echoing through the battlefield. "You should be the one regretting your decision, not me. You imagine that a dagger forged from a dragon's tooth could cause me harm?" A voice mocked, laced with disbelief. "Do you not find this amusing? A clash between a flame born from darkness and a darkness born from the light. However, it seems this engagement is drawing near its conclusion," a voice, filled with a chilling calmness, declared. A moment of silence followed, and then the words, "That is correct. I can foresee the end." "Oh, have you finally realized that further resistance is futile?" a voice asked, curiosity tinging its tone. "That is correct," a calm voice replied. "The army of destruction will not even need to seek this place out, for I will guide them there myself, by removing your head, you foolish monarch." The atmosphere grew thick, heavy with anticipation. "The sun darkens, casting longer shadows," a voice muttered, a sense of dread creeping in. "You," a voice roared, filled with fury. "I shall tear you apart and leave you for the drakes. I will make your demise memorable for daring to stand against the king of dragons until your very last breath." The speaker continued, their tone laced with a sinister curiosity. "I wonder, can you perceive your own undoing? It requires an enormous amount of energy just to sustain great power," a voice, laced with weariness, stated. "This is my final offer. Do you truly have no intention of joining forces with me?" A resolute voice cut through the air. "I will not cooperate with a monster." The speaker's tone was firm, unwavering in its defiance. "How foolish," the first voice replied, a hint of disappointment coloring its tone. The scene shifted to a desolate landscape, the echoes of conflict still reverberating. The monarch of transfiguration and the army of destruction are dismantling everything you hold dear, a voice declared, a cold, calculated tone filling the space. "In the end, you will be unable to protect. Even at this moment as we engage, though you are the king of the departed, you must still feel trepidation." The speaker's voice grew more menacing. "Do you desire for the flames that consume even non-existence to turn you into nothingness? Everything you are desperately seeking to preserve. It will all be revealed as nothing more than an illusion. Surely, you must sense it, since you have awakened the power of Ashbourne. The countless cries of suffering throughout this land and world, that is the essence of conflict, the sound of the army of destruction ravaging humanity. Listen carefully to their desperate cries," the voice stated. "Let despair spread like a plague and silence all hope. You should be the one regretting your decision. You imagined a dagger made from a dragon's tooth could harm the king of dragons? Don't you find this all rather amusing?" A pause followed, then, a clash between a flame born from the darkness and a darkness born from the light. However, it appears this encounter is reaching its conclusion. "That's correct. I can see the end." "Oh, have you conceded that resistance is futile?" a voice asked, tinged with amusement. "That is correct," a calm voice replied. "The army of destruction will no longer need to seek this place out, for I will guide them there myself, by disarming you, foolish monarch." A sudden shift in energy filled the air. The sun darkens, casting longer shadows. A voice muttered, a sense of foreboding creeping in. You, a voice roared, filled with fury. I will tear you apart and leave you as food. I will ensure that your demise is memorable for resisting against the King of Dragons until the very last moment. Then, the speaker asked, I wonder, can you perceive your own end? The scene changed again, a new landscape coming into view. You have brought an end to our conflict, a voice, filled with gratitude, stated. I am unsure how to express my appreciation. Another voice, laced with solemnity, replied, I don't know if what I am about to ask can be considered appreciation, but I do have a request. A request? It's something only you can do for me, a voice, filled with sincerity, declared. I shall strive with all my might to aid you. Just once more. The voice continued. Could I utilize the cup of reincarnation one more time? The atmosphere grew heavy. Did you just ask whether you could use the cup of reincarnation to turn back time? A moment of silence, then the words, that's correct. Even if you were to manipulate time using a divine artifact, the consciousness of the higher beings would still remain. Would you still do it? Another voice questioned, concern lacing its tone. Even if the previous monarchs were to be restored to life, with their memories intact? That is correct, came the firm reply. And once you turn back time, I request that you do not send anyone to Earth, another voice added. I will contend with the monarchs and their forces by myself within the dimensional gap. You are willingly taking on the entire world yourself? What is your reason for this? We have used the cup of reincarnation numerous times, but this is the best outcome that we have obtained so far, a voice explained. Then, the voice continued, I have lost far too many people during this engagement, and I desire to bring them back. The cup's durability has almost been exhausted, a voice warned. If you were to fail at this time, you would be unable to turn back time once again. If you ceased your actions here, you could be remembered as the hero, the one who ended the monarch's invasion, and forever be remembered fondly by all. However, no one will recall the struggle that you are about to undertake now. If you are to fail, the fragments will be waiting. And even if you were to prevail, no one will be present to congratulate you. Still, you desire to turn back time? The speaker paused and then, I will go back in time. So, you intend to protect not just a portion of the world, but the entire world, with your own two hands. Your determination to take everything upon yourself. It reminds me of Ashbourne, your predecessor. The voice, tinged with admiration, concluded, I understand. I wish you the best of luck. Wait, what would happen to the shadow soldiers that did not exist previously? A voice, filled with sudden concern, inquired. The entities that overlap with the past would cease to be, while those that did not would remain. Understood, a voice replied, its tone filled with resolve. I am ready now. May your courage preserve your world, a voice, filled with hope, declared. The aroma of simmering stew filled the small house, a familiar comfort that usually signaled a new day. But today, it carried a strange weight. Gina, could you wake your brother? Her father's voice, usually booming, was a soft hum. Yes, Papa, Gina replied, her bare feet padding against the cool floor. But as she approached her brother's room, a soft voice surprised her. Oh, Jin-Woo said, his eyes already open, you're already awake. He'd been listening. The sounds of the house, the rising scent of the stew, the rhythmic thwack-thwack of her father chopping vegetables. Each was a thread in a tapestry of normality. China, who just washed up, the smell of stew being cooked, the sound of chopping, you're awake, Jin-Woo mused, a strange wistfulness coating his voice. In my room, that's full of my smell, father. The emphasis on father, instead of his usual dad, sent a shiver down Gina's spine. Father, Jin-Woo repeated, his gaze distant. Why are you suddenly acting that way? A pause hung in the air. Jin-Woo's voice, when it came, was lower, as if speaking from a deep sleep. I think I just had a nightmare. He laughed, a light, almost frantic laugh. Yeah, my nightmare has ended. My nightmare is over and now I'm with my younger sister, my mother who's healthy, and my father who didn't disappear. His words were a jumble, each one hitting with strange force. He looked around, a soft smile playing on his lips. I was given the last chance to set everything right. I can now rewrite the future that is to come. I won't lose this opportunity. He paused, his eyes now sharp, filled with a knowing glint. But just for a little creativity trial, isn't it okay for me just to treasure this peace that I'm feeling? As a reward for myself, I know, as well, that beyond those skies there are monarchs, preparing humongous gates to challenge us right now. His voice dipped, quieter. But for just a little longer. If this time that I'm enjoying wouldn't cause harm to anyone, then I would like to stay here and enjoy it for a day longer. The shift was unsettling, like a pendulum swinging from feverish energy to melancholic peace. He spoke of opportunities, of rewriting futures, of monarchs and threats from beyond the sky, a world Gina couldn't comprehend. "I'll come back after I'm done with what I need to do," he stated, abruptly leaving the room, leaving Gina standing in the doorway, lost in her brother's cryptic words. Elsewhere, Jin-Woo found himself in an endless void. This empty world that has nothing but endless darkness feels extremely lonely if there isn't any fighting. He recounted a victory against the monarchs, against the transfiguration, the very core of conflict, finally arriving at the fact that it has been 27 years since he entered the dimensional crack. It looks like the long and dreary fight is finally coming to an end soon. But he knew the fight was not fully complete. The only remaining challenges are the Dragon Emperor and his direct soldiers, the Brigade of Destruction. Time moved differently here. Around 2 years have passed in the outside world. I wonder how father and mother are doing, how much Gina has changed. A pensive pause. Should I wait for her to grow up more before I explain what happened to her? He shook his head, determination hardening his features. My leg aches. We finished things up here. No enemies were left standing. All right, we won't lose a second time. With a low growl, Jin-Woo commanded, "Arise." The monarch of transfiguration, Yogimint, has been defeated, a low voice announced. Shall we move somewhere further from where they are? Jin-Woo responded, "No, I'm tired of running away. We'll stand and challenge him here." A voice echoed from the dark. "The Shadow Monarch is truly amazing. I didn't expect you to use the cup of reincarnation to turn back time. To think I'd meet you again alive and breathing." It paused, the menace within it clear. "But it's time for one of us to rest in peace, for eternity." The voice shifted, becoming curious. "I meant Ares, oh? Second Shadow Monarch, what is your name?" "Sun Jin-Woo," he replied, his eyes locking onto the invisible threat. A final question, from the dark, hung in the air. "Do you have anything else to say?" "No." 2 years had trickled by in the real world, an unremarkable passage of time until a fortune-teller's pronouncements sent shockwaves across America. A god, poised to bring doom, will soon descend upon this land. Norma Selna, the seer, proclaimed, her words echoing across news channels. Normally, such a prediction would be dismissed as fanciful. But Norma Selna was no ordinary soothsayer. "The god of death will descend," she had stated with unnerving conviction, "along with an infinite number of soldiers of death. There's no way for us to evade the coming of this entity." 2 years earlier, she had been an unknown, until she suddenly declared an array of predictions that shook the world. The end of the North Korean dictator, the terrorist hostage situation, and the collapse of the stock market due to the real estate crash. These were events that reshaped the world in a short span of time. She had become the center of a firestorm, and now, her latest declaration promised the end of everything. The next day, the skies of Seoul twisted. A colossal black hole, large enough to swallow the city whole, opened above. Selna's prophecy leaped from the fringes of newspapers and landed on front pages worldwide. An uncomfortable truth now impossible to ignore. "You are over there. It's opening." A voice cried out in the chaos. "The hole is opening right now." Yet, as the world watched, frozen in fear, nothing emerged. It was a silent prelude to what would surely be chaos. "We are glad you've returned safely," a voice announced, breaking the tense stillness. "Welcome back, Sun Jin-Woo, or should I call you the Shadow Monarch?" The speaker, an envoy, addressed Jin-Woo, a middle schooler. "I didn't expect you to appear in the form of a middle schooler." Jin-Woo shrugged. "It's because people might have been scared if I came out with a fully bearded face," he said, a hint of amusement dancing in his eyes. "It doesn't feel bad to have at least one person welcoming me back." "We really didn't think that you'd be able to make it back," the envoy admitted, "after trying to take care of everything alone. But right now, I see that your steps carry the weight of 10 million soldiers." The weight of an unfulfilled destiny had returned. I'm sure you're not here just to give me a flower bouquet, Jin-Woo countered. What business does the envoy of the rulers have with me? The rulers have a message for you, the envoy replied, his voice taking on a serious tone. This might be a long conversation. Shall we move to another location to talk? All right, Jin-Woo agreed. I just happen to have a place that I'd like to drop by in mind. The chosen place turned out to be an ice cream shop. After being in a place where there's nothing for so long, Jin-Woo explained, taking a generous bite of his cone, it's natural that one would like to eat something sweet. What did the rulers say? Jin-Woo asked as he devoured the sweet treat. Ah, they would like to thank you as usual, the envoy replied. Forget the formalities. Is there a problem? No, the envoy assured him. In fact, I'm here for you, because all of the problems have been resolved. The words seemed to offer closure, but Jin-Woo could detect a tension below the surface. The rulers are worried about your powers, the envoy continued, which can influence the direction of the world. The power that you possess is not something that the world is ready for. So, this world that doesn't even have mana is way too weak. Which is why, if you're okay with it, we're wondering if you'd mind moving to another world that's ready to accept your power. Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed slightly. Instead of doing something that's such a pain in the rear end, like moving me to another world, there's also the option of just sealing me completely, he offered. Of course, that's possible too, the envoy conceded. A heavy silence hung in the air, laden with unspoken implications. Now that you no longer have any use, are you guys getting rid of me just because you're afraid of the powers that I possess? Jin-Woo pressed. No, that's definitely not it, the envoy quickly replied, and extended a newspaper to Jin-Woo. Please read this. The god of death would be descending on this land. What's this article about? Before you came back, Selna had created an uproar with a prophecy. Back when you disappeared, she wasn't such a powerful fortune teller, but after coming into contact with our world, her life has changed so. A flicker of comprehension crossed Jin-Woo's face. Are you saying that my existence brought about this change? Yes, monarch, came the reply. Could we talk again another time? Jin-Woo asked, rising to his feet. Instead, I will do just that. A look of worry appeared on the envoy's face. Oh, great monarch. Jin-Woo looked out to the city, the vastness and complexity before him. If every living organism has a fixed purpose for their existence, then one thing's for sure. I, who became the Shadow Monarch, to stop the world's odd phenomena, and the monarchs with my strength have completed my mission. I fulfilled my purpose. A quiet, almost resigned sigh escaped his lips. But a great amount of power that has served its purpose is a pain to deal with, just like nuclear materials that have reached the end of their lifespan. His tone became laced with an undeniable coldness. If that's the case, there will be a lot of questions. Would I now become an existence that this place doesn't need anymore? How meaningless. He looked at the ice cream, the sweet aroma suddenly lacking a spark. However, he murmured, if there's a reason to remain in this place, then it's probably that there are still people that I love in this place, and that people who love me are still here. Which is why, that's enough reason for me to stay here. I'll stay here and find other reasons as to why I should stay here. Police, I would feel a sense of lust from time to time. Work together with the safe and reliable Police 112. The public service announcement played, but it did nothing to shake the strange sensation. It was a bizarre sense of lust that felt like I was forgetting something important. Urgent news flash, human rights equality. A news banner scrolled across the television screen, a stark contrast to the nagging feeling that consumed him. Try as he might to recall, there was nothing I had forgotten, yet, the more and more I thought about it, the bigger the void in my heart would grow. We gentle fourth-year violent crime detectives, his partner, Detective Kim, announced, pulling him out of his thoughts. What are you thinking so intently about? Well, there's no time for a busy bee like me to be sad, Wu said with a forced smile, turning his focus back to the task at hand. Let's just focus on work. Violent Crimes Team 2, who are they? Another detective asked, pointing to a group outside. Constitutional Order Volunteer. Faithfully owe them. Our police are your. A young man blurted, Monster came out of the shadows. I mean, a shadow. A shadow came out of the ground and talked to me. He continued in a rush, explaining, if I didn't surrender myself within 24 hours, it would make me regret being alive. A growing sense of unease washed over Detective Woo. Detective, another man stammered. I admit that I committed the crime, so please put me in jail quickly. So all of you saw that shadow monster? Asked Detective Kim, disbelief lacing his tone. That's what we are saying, came the reply. How should I be reporting this, gentle? Another detective asked, confused. Let the newbie deal with the report, said Detective Kim dismissively. I want you to come to the meeting room now. In the meeting room, tension filled the air. You want to release those who surrendered themselves? Detective Woo asked, incredulous. Hey, Detective Kim whispered, lowering her voice. Lower your voice. Everyone outside is going to hear you. We are not just releasing them. We want to see what will happen if they stay outside for 24 hours. They are just high right now and are spouting nonsense. Detective Woo stated. That monster, or whatever thing that they saw, is probably some kind of new side effect of drugs. But they were tested for drugs, and their results were negative, Detective Kim countered. I even went to the NFS Astras to check the results, personally. And do you think it makes sense that all these people who are not connected to each other would see the same thing and surrender at the same time? Detective Kim continued. The higher-ups told us to look into the reason for a while now, yet we still don't have an inkling at all. We need to do this so we can at least get some sort of a clue. So, we're making that nonsensical situation that they are talking about happen. What if something really happens to them? Woo asked, his concern growing. Detective boy, were you the type to believe in ghosts? Kim teased. I didn't think you were that kind of person. Nothing will happen, detective. We'll just be bringing those suspects to a quiet storage area and seeing what happens. There will be several bulky detectives watching over them, so how would they be able to escape? She added. And let's say a monster really does appear after 24 hours. Shouldn't we be thankful if that happens? All right, we'll need volunteers now, Kim stated. Detective Woo, if you really don't like this idea, you can stay out of it. No, I'll go along as well, he replied, his eyes darting across the room. In the storage area, the men seemed unnerved. Detectives, I really mustn't be here, one of them begged. I'll expire, just stay still. There's something we need to investigate, said Detective Kim, trying to reassure him. I'll really expire, hey? Why would you expire? Another detective questioned. We'll be protecting you by your side. Detective Kim, how long until the 24 hours are up? Woo asked, feeling the tension mount. Let's see. I think there's about 10 minutes left, Kim replied. Ah, it's so cold in here, one of the men stated, rubbing his arms. Somehow it feels like the air around us is different from usual. Oh, the time is up really? Kim asked. Then a new voice spoke up. Her? What? Why is nothing happening? Another of the surrendered criminals exclaimed. Hey, you guys took drugs as a group, right? Don't hold out on us and be straight. Gold for us, but we really saw it previously, one stammered. There were actually 4 of us. Come out from there. Suddenly, they vanished from view, and in the chaos, Detective Kim yelled out, monsters really appeared. 3 of them. The room seemed to spin as the detectives lost consciousness. Later, in a hospital room, one of the detectives muttered in confusion, the ant is smiling. No, forget the ant smiling. How am I able to tell from their expressions that they are glad to meet us? It's as if I'm familiar with situations like this. Just how would you do? Look at the mess you've created. The suspects have gone completely missing, and you, as detectives, simply fainted. The chief stared at them, his voice filled with anger. Detective boy, what about you? You called for the ambulance, right? Do you remember anything? Sorry, when I came back to my senses, everyone was out colder, he replied. Fortunately, this hasn't been reported to the higher-ups yet. I want all of you to keep your mouth shut about this case. The 2 of you got injured by accident while looking into the Garugu gang. Got it? Yes, sir. The detectives replied in unison. The conscripted premins of Korea Crimes Team B, Woo murmured to himself, something is definitely up. Gentle, Are you going to continue investigating the case where the suspects surrendered themselves? Kim questioned. I'm just checking something in my personal capacity, he responded, his eyes focused on a screen. Well, there's quite a lot of criminals that have given themselves up outside of our jurisdiction. Huh, so it seems. Those numbers dropped a lot between late February and early March, though. What's wrong? Is there something that comes to your mind? Kim asked, noticing his pensive expression. Oh, it's nothing much. My aunt used to run a small book rental store, and I was just remembering how my aunt always groaned about how business was bad between late February and early March because that's the season when kids go back to school after vacation. That's pretty useless information, right? Kim asked. Change and chill. No. I'll remember that, just in case. His gaze turned back to the screen, the numbers still haunting his mind, the feeling of something missing returning.